When Ezra Klein and Derek Thompson initially wrote Abundance in March of 2025, their goal was to save the Democratic Party from electoral disaster. But instead, it seems to have lit a fuse under the Progressive Party and sparked a heated internal debate. The book's main idea is the Abundance Agenda. It's to streamline regulations, prioritize outcomes, and build a future where everyone has access to affordable homes, green energy, and opportunity. Progressives, however, are calling it overly optimistic or a centrist dodge that refuses to call out the true villain, corporate greed. Let's take a look at exactly what Abundance is arguing. The book focuses on why America, especially progressive strongholds, are unable to build ambitious projects anymore. Klein and Thompson argue that the US is trapped in a scarcity mindset, where well-meaning liberal policies like comprehensive environmental reviews and strict zoning laws get in the way of governments from being able to build things like affordable housing, renewable energy projects, or efficient transit. They call this the vetoocracy, where too many people have the power to veto projects, which ultimately results in them never getting done. And this is why Democrats are losing elections. Voters see blue states as mismanaged with sky-high rents and mismanaged infrastructure projects. It's a critique of liberal governance and a blueprint for how to fix it. A consistent example that's brought up is the California high-speed rail, which began construction in 2008, has spent $15 billion, and is nowhere near being complete. By failing to build, liberals are ceding electoral power to states like Texas, where things are getting done even if it's imperfect or resulting in less than equitable solutions for all the parties involved. Fundamentally, it's a proposed perspective shift for the Democratic Party that aims to restore faith and confidence in Democrats' ability to lead and build new and ambitious projects for America. Now let's focus on some of the specifics of the book. One of the strongest elements of the book is Ezra and Thomas's deep understanding of political history, which is on display in almost every section of the book. If nothing else, you'll get a fairly comprehensive understanding of why we're in the situation we're in and how we got here. They explain how well-meaning legislation and political attitudes dating as far back as the 1970s are still having a negative slowing effect on our political policies today. It's not that Republicans are blocking Democrats from finishing the high-speed rail project in California. It's just that we have set up too many roadblocks for ourselves to actually finish the projects we have approval to finish. Progressives, however, disagree with that. They argue that it's exactly the Republicans and the billionaires and the ruling class that are undermining these kinds of projects, but we'll talk about that a little later. So what are some of the things Ezra and Thompson point to in terms of why these great ambitious projects are being slowed down? An example of this is California's zoning laws, which reserves 75% of residential land for single-family homes, which drives up housing costs dramatically, and how the National Environmental Policy Act, meant to protect nature, often delays renewable energy projects, which we know will net positive results for the environment and the economy as a whole. What critics of the book incorrectly conclude from this analysis is that Abundance is arguing that we should be more like Republicans. There is a grain of truth to that, but the book specifies that they want smart deregulation. Deregulation that keeps as many protections as possible while avoiding unnecessary and overly cautious legal hurdles. A good example of smart deregulation in the book is what Governor Josh Shapiro did in Philadelphia when a section of Interstate 95 collapsed. When the highway collapsed, experts predicted months of delays, but Shapiro declared a state of emergency, empowering project managers to make swift decisions and cut through red tape, which allowed a streamlining of the permitting process, showing how decisive action can deliver progressive outcomes without sacrificing their values. This leads to one of the more interesting proposals that the book has to offer: They call this idea the bottleneck detective. This is a person or agency that can fast-track certain projects just like Governor Shapiro did in Philadelphia, or how Trump did with Operation Warp Speed. There's also an important section of the book that talks about how our institution of scientific research has stagnated because they're spending too much time on safe bets and not taking enough risks with their research. They argue for a unique system of grant funding that makes room for more radical ideas and ideas that don't have a high probability of success, because historically they argue that a lot of our major advancements of technology come from this kind of random, unpredictable experimentation. Now that we have a solid understanding of what the book is about, let's talk a little bit about whether the book is correct in its assessment. For the most part, I would say the book does a good job at correctly addressing a lot of the problems with the Democratic Party, and does a good job of proposing some unique solutions which, if taken seriously, could have a major impact on how the Democratic Party is able to successfully achieve its goals. The data backs up the problems that Ezra and Thompson highlight in the book. The US builds less public transit per capita than most developed nations, and housing costs in blue states are pushing people to red states, shifting electoral power. I think it's a great start, but unfortunately it's not the complete picture in terms of what the Democratic Party needs to do in order to restore trust and faith from the American people. If they're really trying to propose a new way forward for the Democratic Party, it lacks a comprehensive approach. I think there are a lot of other problems like a lack of leadership, a lack of consistent messaging, and divisions within the party itself. It's great to focus on building and innovation, and I really do think if the Democrats would just focus on accomplishing these things, a lot of the marketing and a lot of the leadership problems and a lot of the divisions within the party would kind of fix itself. But I wish the book went into more detail in addressing these other problems within the party, because I think without a comprehensive approach and a comprehensive analysis, it's kind of hard to get everybody onto the same page. However, that's a fairly minor critique. I think it's a good book. I like a lot of the ideas, and if it sounds interesting to you, I think you should read the book as well. The public criticism comes mainly from the progressive left. They argue that the book diverts attention away from the real villain in the story. For example, the authors mention that Republicans consistently lobby against green energy, but instead of focusing on how to address that problem, they talk more about laws that liberals have put on the books. They know real estate giants are buying up huge swaths of land, but instead of focusing on that, they talk about zoning laws. Progressive commenter Brianna Joy Gray gathered 3 critics of the book to essentially make this same point.
They'll devote a lot of words to talking about how bureaucracy and regulation is a problem, without looking at the ways that the private sector has created exactly that as an impediment to people accessing affordable care as compared to every other similarly situated affluent country in the world. It's hard to come to any other conclusion given how sort of not easy, but sort of obvious and clear the solutions are, that to the extent to which the Democratic Party doesn't want to pick them up and there's this enthusiasm in the alternative for abundance, it's very purposeful, and it's because there's a desire not to relinquish the reliance on the corporate donor class.
I don't know enough to say who's right and wrong in this debate. I'm just analyzing the book on its merits and showing you some of the criticism it's receiving. The only thing I do disagree with is this hostile kind of retort that we're seeing from a lot of people from the progressive left, because ultimately I think it stifles conversation and creates a hostility that doesn't need to be there between both sides of the same political party. I'm sure a lot of what they're saying is fair criticism, and I honestly agree with some of their points, because the book to me did feel incomplete by the end of it. Regardless of its shortcomings, I think it's a very interesting book, and I think it's a good faith attempt to fix some of the obvious problems the Democratic Party has. If the Democrats can become a party that gets things done and gets things done efficiently and successfully creates green energy and affordable housing and efficient transit, I think that would fundamentally change the political landscape we're in today. And I think for any Democrat who is looking to change the party should give this book a fair shot. The progressive backlash is interesting in itself, because it helps you understand the broader conversations that are going on within the party. It's going to be really interesting to see in the coming months or years if any of the ideas in this book actually make it to the ears of our Democratic lawmakers, or maybe even our Republican lawmakers. And honestly, in my opinion, it would be a shame if this is the last we hear of these types of ideas. So what do you think? Do you think the abundance agenda can be the new face of the Democratic Party, or do you think ultimately it falls flat? Thanks for watching.